I just want to make sure that this is strong enough to hold me when I'm saying.
God bless you.
So, as as we end our series on the stewardship, let us study once more a very familiar passage on stewardship, which is found in the book of Matthew, chapter 25, verse 14 to 30. But before we go there, I would just like to ask some question. What does stewardship look like in our lives today? I mean, because we have people talking, but I mean, like, how does it reflect in our thing? So the next question is it only limited to giving, church budget, and building programs? So after, my research, I stumbled on this observation from the Institute for Faith, Work, and Economics. The idea of biblical stewardship is about something more expansive. It's wider. They believe it is where the concept of faith, work, and economic intersect. So, I came to Canada in 2002, followed by my family, my wife, and 5 children in 2004. Their coming has brought a big impact on my financial situation. I didn't have any savings, and I got a huge credit card balance related to their coming. In short, my financial situation was turned upside down. Since we have to rent an apartment, got a car and insurances to pay, all these household expenses that got bigger, my income was no longer enough to cover our basic expenses. Sounds familiar to some of us. My wife, being an accounting person, knew that we are in financial mess. Rose was upset, and I can remember this expression, but I told her that we should not to worry. This is God's plan to bring us together, so He will provide. I told her, we just need to trust Him and to remain faithful, for the one who holds us is faithful. Having 5 kids to take care, Rose has to be a stay-at-home mom. No choice. I will be the only one working, so the option is to look for a second job. And I think quickly I got one which somehow solved our financial need. But my time with my family was sacrificed. Most of the time, I'm at work. I leave early in the morning when kids are still in bed, and I arrive late in the evening when they're about to go to bed. I thought that was the answer to my prayer, but I guess it was not. I quit the second job and chose to have more time with my family. We continued to be faithful to Him, and a few months later, my wife got the support from the government through CTB. You know what CTB means? Child Tax Benefits. God never fails to answer our prayer, and He does provide. God used also other people, relatives, co-workers, brethren, to provide some of our needs, like used clothing, basic furniture, food, and a lot more. We remain to live simply. I would just buy my clothes at Value Village and just buy stuff at the garage sales, and even pick up things being thrown in the rich area. I remember my boss asked me, how do you manage to survive? You are working alone, renting an apartment, and have 5 kids. My response was, we only spend what we have. Basic simple mathematics, right? Another co-worker told me that she cannot imagine how we were able to make ends meet with the paycheck I'm getting. She told me that their budget for fruit alone is $150 per week. I told her simple living is the answer. Your 1 week food budget for fruit is already our 2 weeks budget for food. By faithfully and wisely managing our financial resources, we were able to pay off the credit card balance, and God slowly increased our finances, and we were able to save a bit of what I've earned. In short, we were slowly going forward financial independence. So before we proceed further, let's pray. Our gracious Father, our heavenly God, I pray that you will open our hearts and our minds today as we listen to your word. Hide your servant behind the cross so that we may see Jesus only. And I pray that you empower him so that he can boldly declare your word before your people today. In Jesus' name. Amen. So before we proceed with our text, we have to look at the background of the book of Matthew. So, the theme of the book of Matthew is Jesus and his promised kingdom. The main theme of the gospel, according to Matthew, is Jesus and his promised kingdom. The gospel of Matthew is divided into two main parts, which is from chapter 1 to 16, who Jesus is, and then further subdivided his presentation in chapters 1 to 3, and then his proclamation in chapters 4 to 15. And the second major part is what he came to do in chapter 16, verses 18 to 28. And then his passion. Then from chapter 16 to 21, Jesus begins to preach. If you look at that. Then he starts to show his mission and then his ministries. So in order for us to understand the parable of the talents, we have to look at also the setting of this parable, which is found in chapter 24, the Olivet Discourse. At least for Matthew's account is found in the preceding events leading to Matthew 24. Christ presented himself to the nation as their Messiah, but they rejected him. Not only people rejected him, but their rulers as well. Thus, Jesus rebukes and exposes their hypocrisy and unbelief in Matthew chapter 22 and in Matthew chapter 23. Jesus notes that this present generation of Jewish leaders is like those from previous generations who killed their prophets. And in verse 26, Jesus said to the Jewish leaders, "Truly I say to you, all these things shall come upon this generation." The question is, what things Jesus was talking about? It will be the curse of judgments which will come upon the Jewish people through the Roman army in AD 70, the destruction of Jerusalem. So, in Matthew 24, Jesus left the temple rejected. On their way out, Jesus prophesied the destruction of the temple, which is fulfilled some 40 years later. At Mount Olives, the disciple came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Jesus answered them, "What will happen during the tribulation and signs of his coming." While waiting for his second coming, Jesus gave to his disciples some instructions. Number one, this is the theme. Number one, in verse 42, he said, "Be watchful. Therefore stay awake, for you do not know what the day your Lord is coming." And then secondly, he said, "Be ready. Therefore you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect," which is in verse 44. And then lastly, he said, "Be faithful." A faithful, sensible servant is the one to whom the master can give the responsibility of managing his other household servants and feed them. So, Jesus used these parables, the following parables. You can see the chapter 24 ended with a parable, and then followed by the parable of the 10 virgins, and then the parable of the talents. That, to show if we are watchful, and to show if we are ready, and to show we are faithful. So, I titled this message today, Lucid, or I use it for lucid. getting a title for today's preaching is really difficult. So I researched, did a quite research and stumbled, and God led me to use this title. So I would just like everybody to open your Bible on Matthew chapter 25 verses 40 to 30, the parable of the talents. Let's study together and discover the principles of biblical stewardship. So principle number 1, in verses 14 to 15, in verse 14 again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip and he called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. So the key word here is entrusted. Because, we have to identify the ownership, right? And then in verse 15, we will see how it was entrusted to them. It was, he gave 5 talents to one, he gave 2 to another, and then he gave 1. So the question is, it was given randomly, or it was given, carefully? I think the answer is very clear in that, it was given according to his ability. So it looks like a strange idea today, in our today's time, to leave your money or your resources, but it was not in the ancient world, where servants often given great responsibility. Actually, this is the safest and smartest thing a man could do with his money. So, as we can see also in verse 15, it was not entrusted randomly. It was entrusted according to their ability. I would just like to emphasize that part. So since in this passage, the emphasis is on talent, the question is, what is a talent? Is it singing? But actually, I did further research on the scripture. It will tell us that 1 talent is equal to 6,000 denarii, or equal to 20 years' salary for a typical laborer. We can see that the amount of money entrusted was significant, even for the servant who received just 1 talent. So we are talking about millions of dollars in our present day. So, I'm sorry, the picture was not shown there. So, biblical stewardship is important to determine or establish the owner. We have to settle this fundamental truth that God owns everything, otherwise, the following principles will not make sense to us. So, if you have an issue with the ownership, then that will be a problem. So principle number 2, in verses 16 to 17, once he who received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also had the 2 talents, but and then he made 2 more. But the one who had received 1 went and dug underground and his master's money. So you see, we know the owner, right? So if you know that it was only entrusted to you, then therefore you also have the responsibility. So let's look at the servant number 1 and number 2, how they manage the money. So it says there, went at once and traded with them, and made 5 and 2 talents more, in verses 16 to 17. So we can see it implies direct action. Right? The point is that a good servant felt responsibility of their assignment and went to work without delay. We haven't told how they traded with their talents, right? It does not give an, but we can only assume perhaps they loaned the money at interest. We can see that interest was already existing at the time. Perhaps they used the money and bought the things and sold them for more money, buy and sell business. But the point is that they had and gained more by using. We can say many good things about the first two servants. We can observe that their work was when they worked promptly, that they did their work with perseverance, they did work with success, so therefore they were ready to give account to the master. So let's look at servant number 3. But he who received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his money. So, the third servant did almost nothing with his master's money. He took care of it, that it would not be lost by hiding it. So I think that's the only positive thing that he did. But he did nothing positive with his master's money in contrast to the first two servants. So we can say the work of the third servant, he didn't think, he didn't work, he didn't even try, he only made excuses. So the bottom line, he did not use it. So, responsibility, although God gave us all things richly to enjoy, nothing is ours. Nothing really belongs to us. God's owns everything. We're responsible for how we treat it and how we do with it. While we complain about the rights here or there, the Bible constantly asks, what about your responsibilities? Owner have rights, stewards have responsibilities. So you see the progression, ownership, responsibility. Now let's go to the third principle of biblical stewardship. Accountability. So if you are responsible, therefore you are also accountable. So let's look at carefully in these verses 19 to 20, 22, and then 24 to 25. So, in verse 19, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. So now this is the time where they have to give accounts. So let's look at how the master judged his servants. So we can see that they were judged individually. If they were taken as a group, they did very well, right? Because 8 was given and the return was 15. Yet, each one was judged on their individual fulfillment, faithfulness and effort. I got a quote from Charles Spurgeon says, "Remember, my hearer, that in the day of judgment thy account must be personal. God will not ask you what your church did, He will ask you what you did to yourself." A steward is the one who manages the possession of another. We are all stewards of the resources, abilities, and opportunities that God had entrusted to our care. And one day, each one of us will be called to give account for how we manage what the Master has given us. We will give account to the rightful owner as to how well we manage the things He has entrusted to us. So like this. So finally, in verses 21, 23, and 26 to 28, if you are accountable, then you also have a reward. So let's look at on verses 21 to 23 because they are identical. His master said to them, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." You have been faithful handling this small amount. So I now will give you how many more responsibilities? Let's celebrate together. So well done, thou good and faithful servant. So let's go deeper on the word good, so that we can understand exactly the perspective of the master. So in Greek, there are two words for good, which is agathos and kalos. So agathos means inwardly good. I thought that for something that I'm not the only one nervous, including the PowerPoint is nervous as well. So it's inwardly good, of good constitution or nature, while kalos is good in appearance, which is superficial. And then faithful is objectively trustworthy. So you can see here that the word good used in verses 21 and 23 is agathos. So the first and second servants receive the same reward, right? They are, regardless of how much they made. One made 5, another one made 2, but they received the same reward. Because the master was not concerned on the amount they made, but rather he looked or judged them according to their character and their faithfulness. That's stewardship. So we can see the first two servants, the rewards for the first two servants, they receive praise from their master. They receive a promise for future blessings. And then they receive the glory, the joy of their master. You see, you have been faithful handling these things, this small amount, so I will give you more responsibility. Let's celebrate together. I would just like to emphasize here, the master doesn't really care about what was made. It was just the faithfulness. The master doesn't really care the amount made. He is more concerned on the character, on how they used it. Stewardship on the resources he entrusted to them. Now let's examine the reward of the third servant. You wicked and lazy or slothful servant. Why wicked? It reveals the lack of faith in his master. Because he said, I knew you are a hard man. So if you knew that I'm a hard man, at least you did manage it well, right? And then lazy, because you did nothing to it. The master said, why did you didn't deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten interest in it. Right? So there was already a banking system at this time. So that's why I said earlier, they could invest the money, right? So, and then the consequences, so take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. So the third servant revealed his lack of faith in the master, and yet the master believed that the servant had given something. So the bottom line, the third servant, he lost it. According to Colossians chapter 3, verses 23 to 24, whatever you do work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Christ. So I guess my message was a little bit faster than I thought. I guess I can tell you about the story of this man who wants to give to his church, right? Because I still have a little bit more time. I think you already heard this story. One day a man came to a pastor and said, Pastor, I want to give to the church. I want to help the church, to advance its kingdom. But the man said, Pastor, I do not have a job. So the pastor said, that's not a problem. We will pray that God will give you a job. So the next day he said, Pastor, I got a job. So he started giving in church. But he said, Pastor, I have another problem. And the pastor said, what's your problem? I can only give this much because my salary is this much. So 10% of what I get is that's what I'm giving. So the pastor said, let's pray that your income will increase. So God blessed him, and then his business, he put up his business, and his business grew. And it becomes a very big business. Imagine if you have a $1 million business and your 10% is how much? $100,000. So one day he came to the pastor again and said, Pastor, I have a problem. And what is your problem this time? And I said, when I was giving like $500 a month, it was easy. But giving $100,000 per month is kind of hard. So I'm having difficulty with this. And the pastor said, that's not a problem. Let's pray that God will take away, so that you can go back to your $500 per month giving. So, in our conclusion, in our message today, why biblical stewardship matters. Why? Because according to verse 29, for to everyone who has will, more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. So, let's look at the NLT version of this one, because I believe it can drive a more clear point. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. So why does it matter? Because if you do not use it, you will lose it. So, now for our application, 3 points. We are called to work while waiting for the Master. We are not called to sleep. We're given everything we need to do what God has told us to do, so we have no excuse. He will hold us, remember this, He will hold us accountable for what we do with what God has given us. So, in light of this parable and principle, we must ask ourselves what we have done with our knowledge, our time, our money, our abilities. And in the sins of omission may ultimately be more dangerous than the sin of commission. Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for your word today. Thank you for the truth that indeed you're coming back again, and we want us to be faithful, to remain faithful. Indeed, Lord, it is my prayer that you may find us faithful upon your return.
Yes.
Lord, help us to remember that everything belongs to you, and we have the responsibility of managing it. And therefore, we're accountable for it, Lord. And Lord, we are also anticipating your reward when you will return to us. May you find us, may you say us, well done, thou good and faithful servant. In Jesus' name, amen.